It's connecting to us. Connecting now.
It's so bad. Well, what are you gonna do?
Shelly, can you double check the feed? It's not. It's looking kind of weird to me here.
Yeah, I'll check it. And there's no attendees yet. So have you opened up the?
Yeah, I haven't
Okay.
opened it
Oh,
yet.
okay, got it. Okay.
Here it says that webinar is on live on Facebook.
It does say that?
Here, yeah, I say live on Facebook.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the doors and let people in. Okay, they're coming in. Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. Have a seat and we'll start in about 4 minutes.
I need more light.
So David, you're down in North Carolina right now, right?
I'm in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I bought a place down here when I lived in New York. I was in Washington, D.C. for like 20 years at 19th and S, and I miss Washington a lot. And then I was in New York for like 12 years, and I also miss New York, especially my building, a lot. Except now that I'm quarantined or, in a home situation, I'm very happy to be down here on this island with a sea breeze coming in, and I'm automatically socially distanced anyway. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty because I'm doing basically what I would do anyway, except I'm spending as much time trying to figure out ways to aid other people, which I hope something like this will do, because that's the best thing I can do right now.
Yeah, there's worse places to be locked down, I think. I know Maria is in Virginia and Indira is in Virginia, and then Clarence, Carl, and Maggie, you're all down in South Florida, right?
In Miami.
Miami, yep.
Awesome.
Miami. Okay, sorry. I want to say.
Your phones, okay? Maggie is Miami.
It is. Welcome everyone. We're going to start in about 2 minutes.
Password to the. No, that's my laptop. Okay, password.
No, I'm not so bad. There you go.
Oh, don't say your password
I'm not.
because you are on the air.
I know, no problem. No, I'm typing it. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Which glasses shall I wear? Where? I wear.
Yeah, okay. Just go on real quick. So
Very good.
All right, we're going to start in about 1 minute. Come on, we're at 195. We can get a couple more to get to 200, right?
yeah.
3 more.
Some are in Europe and they say they're going to see it.
I know. I
Yeah.
started scheduling these things and didn't realize that we would have
You
people
should do a
from. I should have known though with this panel. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for this discussion about resilience, determination, and hope. I think tonight we're going to zero in on the power of photography to lift us up in a time of need. My name is Joe Newman, and I'm the founder of Focus on the Story. And tonight's broadcast and show is part of our virtual photo festival, which will be running through June. We're streaming on Facebook tonight. And if you're doing the social media thing during tonight's discussion, feel free to use our hashtags, hashtag Imagine Hope and hashtag FOTS20. I also encourage everyone to ask questions, submit your questions whenever you think of them by going down to the bottom of your screen and clicking on the Q&A function. You can also talk to us via chat, but if you put a question in the chat, there's a good chance that we'll miss it. So please use the Q&A function. About 3 weeks ago, Carl Juice called me up and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, you know, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, what's going on? Is there something wrong? You know, at this time in the world, you've got to be very careful when you start a conversation like that. So I sat down and he wanted to tell me about this idea that he was very excited about. He said, we need to remind people what hope looks like. And that was just about 3 weeks ago. And here we are, we've launched our campaign, the Imagine Hope campaign, and we're here with these amazing panelists to talk about it. Carl is a photojournalist at the Miami Herald. And if that was all he had on his resume, he'd have a pretty impressive list of honors and awards. But that's just a slice of who he is. He's deeply involved in the South Florida community, where he's an educator, curator, and civic leader. He's the founder of the Iris Photo Collective, and he has his own gallery in Miami. Carl, you brought us all together tonight. This is your show. Tell us what inspired you to take on this project, and what do you hope it accomplishes?
Well, thank you. And thank you for everyone coming on board and taking the time to chime in this important conversation. You know, as a photographer, we always try to extract light in dark places. And, you know, I've covered wars, covered, you know, personal tragedies, and it's always been important to me to extract a sense of humanity and hope in every assignment that I do. And I can't speak for the rest of the panelists, but I've seen their work. And I've seen the stuff that David has done in Cuba. I've seen the stuff that Maggie has done in Haiti. I've seen the stuff that Griff has done locally and in Jamaica and all around the world. I've seen the stuff Maria has done throughout Latin America. And the thing that ties us all is the sense of resiliency. And the sense that we don't need to speak on behalf of other people. We allow people to speak for themselves, and we use our cameras as the amplifier. And I am proud to be among such prestigious company. And we have Indira, who's been involved in the museum, who's practically seen history every day. And then we have Joe. Joe and I go back, what, 2 years, 3 years? And from the minute he said, Carl, hey, I'd like you to sit on my panel, you know, that he set me up. And he gave me this drug called Purpose. And I've been running on that drug ever since. And now that I'm an addict, I said, Joe, it's time to return the favor. So we got together and we brainstormed and we started this wonderful fellowship of 5 individuals, and now 6, actually 7, because Luis Rios is not here because he's busy at work, who's going to be our photo editor moving down the road. But let me introduce you to a couple of some of these amazing visual storytellers. And the first person is David Allen Harvey. Now, David, we have met several times, and it's always been during Basel or the Street Festival and in Cuba. But you know, David is a person. Every time I see him work, he works with such intensity and lightness. He's very light. When he approaches you, when he approaches his work, it doesn't feel like he's it doesn't feel heavy. Look at his photograph. One of the photographs I remember, David, is the Cuban boy poking out of the blue car with the red scarf or red towel around his neck. And I remember that. I remember that photograph because it was a balance of documentation and a balance of art expression. I said, hey, that's the kind of pictures I want to make. And I went to Cuba right after he went, and I failed a couple of times, but I got a couple of nice images that I'll be proud of, and I would say, hey, David inspired me. So David, I know you won numerous awards, and you're Magnum Photo Agency, and you're also the editor of Burn Magazine, and you work for National Geographic. But tell us, David, how do you make the pictures that you make?
Well, first of all the awards and Magnums and National Geographics, those were things that were sort of necessary for me to do what I do. You know, I fell in love with photography, Carl, just about as the crow flies, about 50 miles north of here in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I had a little darkroom when I was like 12 and 13, and I've got a darkroom here in the back now. And over the years, one of the things that interests me most about you actually is the fact that you are a documentary photographer. You're a newspaper photographer, which was my first job in photography too. But I was always interested in the world of art. I loved artists. I was a misfit. I was in Virginia Beach, Virginia, which was a tourist town and a military town. But I was falling in love with Robert Frank and Cartier-Bresson and Imogene Cunningham. And I saw that I didn't fit the military thing. I didn't fit the tourist thing. I didn't fit where I lived really, but I saw that somebody like Robert Frank or Cartier-Bresson could go out on any street, anywhere, anytime, and make an image that could end up on the walls of the Bibliothèque Nationale. So it could be Life magazine or in the newspaper, and then later end up on the wall of a museum. And I loved that. I love the combination of documentary and art. And that's why I have so much respect for you, my friend. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh man, I'm the one that's blessed. And now I have Maggie, as she once referred to me as one of her kittens. And that's one of my badge of honor. Maggie has been, again, another source of inspiration, has been my boss, has been my colleague, has been my confidant, and definitely a source of creativity. Maggie is one, like David just said, she's able to pull these wonderful images at very common places. I remember when she came in my home and my son was born. Remember, Miles? And Maggie said, I need to shoot this cover about sleep, and I want to shoot your son. And to this day, Maggie, Miles, I think he definitely looks forward to being photographed by you more than me. He brags about that image. And when Maggie brought me a copy of it, and I looked at it, and instantly I said, wow. You know, it's one thing for someone to tell you to go do assignments, and it's another thing to see that same person bring it home. So Maggie, tell us a little bit about your process. Tell us about your path to how you got where you are now, and how you got me so smitten by your work.
Well, you're very kind, Carl, and I think you could have taken that picture as well, but thanks for that. So I started out as a picture editor at Associated Press, and I did that for 4 years. Then I went to Africa to cover a war, and then I came back to New York, and I had to start all over again because I had a portfolio of war pictures and nobody cared about that war. It was over, and I realized that I wanted to tell long form stories, but I started finding little stories, funny little stories, and selling them. And anyway, little by little, I started working for magazines. And then, so I've worked in 70 countries, covering everything from war to fashion. And
you won a Guggenheim, didn't you?
What?
You won a Guggenheim. A Guggenheim.
Yeah, a Guggenheim, yes. The Guggenheim Foundation.
That's a tough one, though. That's not easy.
No, it wasn't. And that was for the Secret Garden of Lily La Palma. And that's a very personal project in which it's really my story. Because, you know, we go out, and I think what what makes us want to be photographers is that we're curious and we want to know about people and we want to know their stories. And I think I'm somebody who believes very much in doing a lot of research and then going in like I don't know anything and learning at the knee of the people who I want to photograph. And I find that most of the time I'm listening and then I'm taking pictures, except for the baby. But and I know you, Carl, because I came to Miami to be the director of photography at the Miami Herald, and I did that for 4 years with the most talented staff on the face of the earth. An amazing staff, so talented, so wonderful. I loved them. I still love them. But that was the greatest privilege, anyway, to work with those people. But I just love to tell the stories of people. I can't believe that they trust us and that they tell us their stories. But the Guggenheim Project was sort of my story, but it's interpreted in various ways that are not so obvious. And that was a pretty wonderful thing to happen as well.
Can I tell them a little? One time, Maggie was editing us, right? And she's going through our stuff, and she says, you know, why are you shooting where everybody else shoots? And we all kind of looked, and I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, why don't you give me an image that no one else is looking for? Why don't you sit when everybody's looking to the right? Why don't you look to the left? And she goes, let me show you an example. She pulls out this picture of these young ladies in a convertible driving down Collins Avenue. And she said, well, everybody would have shot it with these women passing by. But I was in the car, and these women are just glamorous, but with a sense of style, right? And she says, you have to choose your own path that speaks to you. That has stuck with me till this day. Many times you lose, but when you win, like Maggie would say, you win big because you're choosing to take a chance on yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right?
Right.
And that's part of the courage, which links to the hope, right?
Yes.
I think so.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for coming, Maggie, and thank you for
Maggie is a beacon. Maggie's a beacon.
Oh yeah, I
Oh.
mean,
A beacon, a role model for everybody.
you know, if you ever light a match in a dark room, that's who she is. She's that one
That's
light
right.
Ah,
that lights up everything.
thank you.
Okay, piling on Maggie here. She spoke at our first photo festival in 2018, and she presented her Secret Garden project. And to this day, it's my favorite presentation that I've listened to. It was amazing. But anyways,
Thank you. Everybody. So sweet. Thank you.
So now we go to CW.
You, Maggie. Authentic.
I mean, now we go to Maria. I'm sorry. Maria is up next. And Maria, we just met. We just met about 2 years ago, right, Maria?
Yes.
And it was purely by coincidence. We're both were invited to this show, and we're on the same floor. Yeah, we were on the same floor. You were on one side of it, I was on the other side. And I remember going up the stairs and seeing these collections of these black and white images, and I saw myself. And I saw myself from afar. And the closer I got to her images, the more they looked like me. And then I'd say, who made these images? And then when I read the caption, it was from Brazil, Quilombos. There are people who live in Quilombos, which I photographed from Brazil. I don't think I did quite as a job as she did, but I looked at these images and it reminded me of what my dad once told me, that son, your crown has been paid for, wear it well. And I think everyone on this panel, they have that instinct to take their subjects and elevate them to where they belong. Not in the ditches, not in the slums, not in the favelas, but in in the very sense of part of this thing we call humanity. So Maria, we have this great book called Quilombo. We did a show during Basel, Miami.
Yay for the book. The book
Yes.
is beautiful.
Thank you.
If you don't know the book, you better find the book because the book is amazing. Maria, tell me what you're from Bolivia, number one. Highly educated, travel around all around the world. I think your dad was a diplomat, correct?
Yeah.
And she has this passion and love for Africa, and it pulls her, it drives her. But Maria, tell me about your process. Tell me about your process when you go in and you make these majestic images. Tell me how do you get beyond the flesh?
Well,
Get beyond the flesh.
I began as a
That's
painter.
great. I'm gonna write
I thought I was going to be a painter, but then I
But you paint with light.
photography.
Mhm.
And I paint with light, yes, that's what I do. And I'm specializing, I like long-term projects. So Quilombo is the first one I did, and it's thanks to David that is here that he published, the Burn magazine published that book.
Thank you,
And,
Dave.
well, I do my research. I get very involved in where I'm going. I stay, I sleep there. I live with people in Quilombos. So, and with a lot of patience, and I listen to them especially.
I want to follow that. You just said you listen to them because I've seen your catalog of work as it pertains to the book. And there is, it's funny because you talk about photographers, you think your eye is your primary source of information, right? But you do listen to them because the moments you catch are the pauses between those that golden moment that exists between the relationship between the subject and the photographer. It's not that you're guiding them, but they trust you. Can you speak to that trust?
I think I trust them first.
Ooh.
And I believe in them. I go into favelas. I go slowly, quiet. If they tell me not to talk or not to do something, I obey every single thing they say because I respect them. I am in their territory.
And I know also you have this journalism. You speak multiple languages. You study journalism. You've been to Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, and tell me what are those experiences? How has that developed your global sense of your global awareness? How's that develop your global as a visual communicator?
Well, I worked in Brazil, and I had exhibitions in those places that you mentioned. I lived in Peru. I lived in several countries, of course, and that teaches you. It has its good part and its bad part because it teaches you to respect other cultures and to understand. Try always to understand cultures. So I think that experience in my life helped me, and helped me to get into different cultures. So Chile, I lived a short time, but I had exhibition there. I showed different exhibitions in different parts, but Quilombo was the most successful experience I had.
It's an amazing book. I own one. I've given multiple copies to friends.
I own two.
And yeah, and it's an amazing book, and it's a great case study on how to photograph the other and make them feel that they're part of your own life. And I think that everyone on this panel has that talent, that you're able to make the foreign seem familiar, and able to make the familiar the familiar seem foreign. And it's an ability that you have to just give into. Speaking about ability, let's go to C.W. Griffin. Now, him and I have a really our relationship started in the birth of my career. When I was at UM and was an intern at the News, and then went to work in the lab at the Miami Herald. He was one of those mentors that it never ever told me how to shoot or what to shoot, but always led by example. And we've had developed a relationship that's both professional and personal. He is one of the members of IRIS, and a gifted, highly intelligent visual communicator. And so CW, and plus, and award winning, of course, but he was the first person of color to win the Military Photographer of the Year, which is something which is not easy, especially when you're looking at late 70s and mid 80s. There were not many people of color, Black males or females, part of the organization. So CW, thank you for joining us, and tell us about why you make pictures.
Wow, that's a good one. It's strange because, sort of like Maria, I started out thinking that I was an artist, trying to oil paint and sculpt and wood carve and dabble in all those forms of art. And upon going to college, I discovered photography. And initially, even as a photographer, I thought I was going to grow up and be Ansel Adams. I learned all the formulas, and I learned how to print and how to make beer solution and everything. And my life changed when I was invited to be a part of a documentary, of which I entered a room, someone told their story, and I realized that the only reason I was there, and the only reason that they told me all of these personal, intimate things about themselves, was because I had this camera. It was that realization that allowed me to use that as an instrument to go forward and to learn as much as I could about humans and how they react in certain situations, and how to be able to assess a situation to the point of trying to make an image that would speak to that particular situation.
Now, you said that's the key word. I think the key word is make as opposed to capture or take. Why do you use the word make as opposed to other terminology or that's might be available to you? Why you use the word make?
Well, the word take implies that I am really stealing or removing something from someone. And that is never my intention. My intention is always to make an image that elevates that particular instance, and to be respectful.
Thank you so much, CW. Now we come to Indira. Now, she says, I'm not a photographer. We had this conversation, but I think Indira probably holds one of the most important positions in our profession. She's a gatekeeper.
That I am.
She's a gatekeeper. She is a curator. She's a facilitator. She's a researcher. She's an educator, all for the museum. And to me, she is part of this family, this photo family, an important part of this photo family. And she will be in a role of help us navigate through these numerous amount of images. She'll be the voice that will probably calm us down when we get heated.
You didn't tell me that, Carl. You didn't tell me that. Right.
Indira and I met through Carol Guzzi. We traveled France together, went to Perpignan, and we have become photo soulmates because we understand the power of the visual language. I think we all do, all of us understand the power of the visual language. and how important that language is in allowing humanity to be shared on a large scale. So, Indira, tell us about what drove you to photography and what drove you into the role that you're doing now, and what you plan to do in the future in terms of photography, in terms of the visual language.
I was thinking about that when our other colleagues were talking, because at the very beginning of my career when I was in school, I wanted to be a video editor. I was attracted to the glitz of television and the moving image, and that's what I wanted to do. But then we had a photo contest, and to my great amazement and surprise, I placed first in a couple of the categories. And what my teacher said to me was like, "You have a really good eye, and you should look into that as your focus as you continue to move forward with your work as a communicator." The still image grabbed me. It took me to different places, starting with photo research. I've researched a bunch of different things, stock photography, news photography, until I got to the museum. And for more than 20 years, I've been looking at the best there is in photography, Pulitzer Prizes, historic images, images that tell a variety of news stories, human stories, stories of hope and resilience, and stories that very much resonate with me and with the project that we're doing right now. So when you mentioned to me the possibility of collaborating with you on this, I just thought, well, how perfect can these be for me as I'm trying to figure out what my next steps are. So thank you. I am so very honored to be working with you all, and I look forward to see more of those images of hope that these photographers from all around the world, from different backgrounds, different inclinations, different interests, diverse backgrounds, diverse ethnicity, diverse hopes and dreams, and diverse ways that you'll look at the world. So this is very exciting for me.
Yeah, I love the fact that you use that word diverse, because sometimes when we think of diversity, we think of it as a piece of compartments, little small pieces, as a menagerie. But diversity is just a landscape that we all have to navigate, that makes us, as we navigate through this situation or through whatever people that you meet, it makes us better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are part of a world that is put together by a bunch of different things. And we are all what makes everything come together and what makes everything shine. And we are the ones who bring hope and see hope and capture hope. And so how can we possibly speak to what hope is if we don't have it represented from many different places and many different people?
Valid point. And that said, let us look at some examples of hope.
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay, David. All right. See?
I was asked to submit 2 photographs for this, and it was a pretty easy thing to think about. First of all, well, I come from a family. My mother was a school teacher, and my dad was in engineering. As I said, we were in Virginia Beach, which was about 16 miles from where I took this picture. But I was from I was middle class. My dad had been in the military, so I certainly was not from a wealthy family, but I was from a middle class family, and I lived in a neighborhood of all white people, and the only black people that I saw were the maids that even middle class people had back then. And Dahlia was a maid that we had. I mean, I feel bad about this now, but we became friends with Dahlia, and we would go into her neighborhood, which was literally across the tracks, just like you might imagine, in SeaTac, Virginia, near Virginia Beach. And I became friends with her family because my mother would take us there at Christmas time, we would take Christmas presents and gifts. And so, and my mother told me, raised us to believe that all men were created equal. A cliche, but that's what she and my dad really believed. In any case, I fell in love with photography in Virginia Beach when I was about 13 years old, and again, it was kind of an escape from some of the stuff that I saw around me. The other kids, I was different from the other kids. What I wanted to be was, again, something that I could only see in books. It was not around me. I could only see. I saw that landscape photographers needed. Ansel Adams wasn't shooting in Indianapolis. He needed Yosemite, right? And war photographers needed a war, and sports photographers needed the Olympics, and New York photographers needed a fashion model. I didn't have any of those things. So naturally I gravitated towards the Robert Frank, Cartier-Bresson, anything can make a picture school of photography. And one camera, one lens, and let the subject do the talking. In any case, photograph of David Liggins. I lived with the Liggins family for 1 month. I failed at an assignment for National Geographic when I was 21 years old. I failed. Bob Gilkle said, you will never make it as a professional photographer. But I didn't like the pictures that I'd taken on the test. So I had 1 month of summer left before I went back to University of Missouri grad school, photojournalism, right? And I thought, I got to do this color photography thing. I don't like National Geographic anyway. I got to do something important with my camera because that was bullshit. I didn't like the color. I didn't like anything about it. So I thought I got to do something good. And I teamed up with this other guy who was joining the Peace Corps. We were hippie kids. We were civil rights kids. We were gay rights kids. We were anti-war kids, right? We're from that generation.
Right.
I lived with the Liggins family for 1 month, made this photograph of David Liggins. I still know this family. I don't know David anymore, and the family won't let me meet David, the kid on the skateboard. I think he's in trouble. But Lois Liggins is my friend still after 50 years. She was 7 years when she made the cover of this book, Tell It Like It Is, which I sold for $2 at the time. It went to the local Baptist church to go for food and clothing for the Liggins family. So it was a naive but a beautiful project. Anyway, this picture came out of it. And I think it was about hope. I mean, here was a kid in a tough situation, and he had a moment. He had his release. He had his escape. He had a handmade plywood skateboard that he made with roller skates and a cutout piece of plywood, and he's just stepping out into freedom. This picture, which is being sold right now on the Magna print sale, by the way, I have sold this picture many times, but the original intent for Tell It Like It Is was not for me. All the money that we made from the little booklet that went for $2 went to the church and to the family. And now my print sale went to the Bronx Documentary Center in New York, which was a great gallery. I think you guys know about it. And right now the proceeds are going to Doctors Without Borders. So that was the original intent. I've stayed in touch with the family. Lois was right here just, how long ago was that, Alejandro? Anyway, a year or so ago, Lois was right here in my living room. The girl that was 7 is now 57. She's a social worker. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story.
Griff,
anyway, that's my hope. That's my hope.
Let me ask you a quick question about this picture, Griff. Because the reason why I point to Griff, because we went to the South together, and he has images aesthetically that has the same type of movement and feel. Griff, remember the time we were in New Orleans? Was it New Orleans? We're in Mississippi. Was it Mississippi, New Orleans?
Oh, it was New Orleans.
The picture of the little girls playing hide go seek.
Right.
Yeah, it has
That's
that
in
feel, right?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right? Had that same type of feel, right? Kind of like you had this movement, you have this kind of like celebration of the now and the past. This is a beautiful picture.
But what Griffin said earlier is what he said is what I believe too. Sir, you said something I think that was very important. You said you make photographs, taking pictures implies that you're taking something away. And particularly me, even in that time, during the Martin Luther King was assassinated 3 months after I took this picture. So those of you who can remember that time or know about that time, it was worse even than now. Now, of course, now we've got another problem, but we obviously, this is a social situation that was in my generation is with us now. But in any case, yeah, my whole thing, I mean, the mother of this family let me sleep on the sofa, and I didn't knock on the door and say, I'm a photojournalist, I want to take your picture. I said, let me take a picture. I took a picture. I went to my little darkroom, I made some prints, and I brought it back, and I got invited to stay day after day. So, as I say, we're still friends. However, Griff, what you said was the most important thing, and thank you, sir.
Well, David, there's one thing that I would like to add while I'm looking at this picture. I too grew up in the South, actually on the other side of the railroad track. Went to segregated schools. But this picture reminds me so much of my childhood because I too took plywood and a set of Union No. 5 roller skates and separated them and put them together and made skateboards. So this picture for me has a lot of emotional appeal because it's something that I can definitely identify with.
Well, you know something? That to me is justification for it. If that hit you that way, then that's all I need for that picture. Thank you very much.
And
I appreciate it.
And that's the key, emotionally identifying. Okay, and it's
Well, I get him. I'm Carl. You know this about me, and the next picture is part of that too. I always get embedded with things. That's Cartier-Bresson and Robert Frank were my heroes,
right.
and I copied them as much as I could over a certain period of time. And this picture is kind of a Cartier-Bresson copy, right? Except that you copy somebody for a while, but then you got to go in your own direction. Cartier-Bresson hated color, and so I decided to embrace color. Although I was a very serious black and white photographer. And then the other thing was that Cartier-Bresson was friends with Jean-Paul Sartre and Matisse and Picasso. Those were the people that he hung out with. And, I was more of have a beer in my left hand and a camera in my right. I liked people. I wanted to talk to people. Cartier-Bresson was a French bourgeois, so he was pulled back a little bit. He wasn't hanging out in bars and people's homes, right? And so that's where I broke away from him. I wanted to be in the scene, not interfering with it, but becoming so much a part of it that I could then pull back and be in the corner of the house after getting to know these people. And there was a natural moment that occurred because I knew them so well. You see what I mean? In other words, I was invisible finally, but I couldn't just walk in off the street and get a picture like that.
But you
And
also have a great sense of composition. I mean, look how that picture, you have the leading line that kind of leads you out of the frame and wraps around that corner. You have this proportion between the young girl in the back and with the foreground and where the action's occurring with the ball in the child's head. And you form this wonderful triangle between the moment, the composition, and the texture. You see,
well, the thing is, the reason I picked both of these pictures, thank you for saying that about this picture, because I was an art history major. Yeah, the curve, all of those things, the kid showing off for the little girl. Both of those pictures are very autobiographical. Both of them are autobiographical and both shot in similar circumstances. The first picture, the kid on the skateboard, was shot smack in the middle of the civil rights movement. I was shooting in Norfolk, Virginia, that picture, but Washington, D.C. was on fire. The country was in civil rights turmoil at that time. This picture was shot about 15 kilometers where people were being killed. Also, this was in a war zone. So, but even in a war zone, I had an assignment from National Geographic in Honduras, Nicaragua, and I did go out there on the front lines of. I'm not a conflict photographer, but I was then. But still, even then, the autobiographical nature of who I am as a human being comes into play in my photography when I'm out and photographing other people. So this is very much a self-portrait, if you will. I don't want to go too far down that road, but most of the photography that I do is looking in the mirror one way or another, even when I'm photographing other people. I always find something. I always find a hook to somebody else that I can relate to.
Remember that what he just said, because we're gonna go to Maggie. I think Maggie's coming up yet, but okay. All right. I want you to really look at this frame. I want you to study this frame. And I want you to understand, anyone who knows Haiti knows the power is in the hand of women. I'm gonna say that one more time. So you can understand, and this is not something you pick up a book or a travel guide that's gonna give you that kind of insight. This is exactly what David is talking about, to being culturally embedded, to be engaged, and also to be completely overwhelmed in the humanity of what seems to be a stranger that somehow becomes a mirror of your own values. This picture, when I saw it, speaks to my mother, to my aunt, to my sister. It speaks to my country, my motherland, because this says more about Haiti than a lot of pictures that come out of Haiti. I won't speak for Maggie. I'll let Maggie speak for herself, please.
Well, thank you, Carl. This to me is a real picture about hope, and I would say that if I had to think of Haiti in one word, it would be about hope, because every day people wake up and they get up, the majority of people, just to face the most difficult circumstances, but they get up every day and they do it again and again and again. And I think it's because they are driven with hope that things will get better. And this is out in the countryside near, just after you pass a city called Gonaïves. And I used to see people up on top of this mountain. And I always wondered what they were doing up there. And so one day I climbed the mountain before the sun came up, and I sat there, and finally I thought, oh, well, nobody's coming today. And as the sun started to rise, one by one, these women came up, and finally this minister, and that's whose hand you see. And so in these circumstances, again, as other people have said, you don't just start taking pictures. I just sat there and watched, and I wait to be recognized. And then I told the minister that I had seen, so I speak French and I speak Creole. I learned Creole, what a language, I love this language. But, and so I asked why they always come up there, and he said, because up here we are closer to God. And then they started praying, and they pray for money to buy medicine for their sick wife or their sick children, or to pay for their school, their children's school, or to buy seed to plant, or just any number of things. So every morning they come up there and they pray on top of this mountain. And it was just such a lovely thing to be there. And I think we become part of the wallpaper. Like, I never just start taking pictures. I just wait and until everybody is really comfortable, and I'm kind of part of the wallpaper as much as I can be, as being a foreigner and then a white woman in a black country. But women are the potomitan, what's called the potomitan of Haiti. And the potomitan is you find it in a voodoo temple. It's a pole, but it's supposed to hold up the temple, but it also is how the voodoo spirits leave their world and enter ours to leap into somebody, to possess them. So anytime you say that somebody is a potomitan, it's an honorable thing, that these are strong people, that they are holding up the community, or they are holding up the world. And so women in Haiti are the potomitan. Nothing would happen in Haiti without them.
Okay.
So, and I think it's, I mean, I loved the experience too. You know, this is the thing about photography for all of us, I think, is that it's not just about the picture that you get, but it's about the experience. And I think whenever I look at this picture or a number of pictures, even by other people, but certainly my own, I just remember these experiences and how I've just had a life I never expected to have because of photography. And I think we're photographers because we are hopeful. This is why we do it, because we're hopeful about the world and we're curious about it and we're hopeful about it. And I think
And
that's
we're hopeful about the process, because a lot of time when you make pictures, you miss, your portfolio is not a measurement of solely your successes, but is the abundancy of failures. And those pictures are the ones that you happen to get, but you missed a whole lot of them prior. Oh, this could be like a painting.
that is a painting.
it's
That's
a
an
little
incredible, incredible image.
And the story is amazing.
an amazing story.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
bravo, Maggie. That's monumental.
It is.
Thank you.
It has this. It's beyond its surface. It has this. It rises. The more you look at it, the more it rises. And not only in the shapes that Maggie have placed. We're using the body and the form and the hands, but the way she's been able to connect all three elements, and with no conflict. It's just so smooth and peaceful. It's just gorgeous. It's
In the light of the Dutch masters, no less.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes. So Maggie, please tell us about this image.
First of all, all photographers should look at paintings throughout
Agreed.
the history of art, because you really find a lot of inspiration and a lot of ideas. And even if it's not paintings of people, but even just abstract paintings can be very inspiring. But this was a 3-year project I did for National Geographic on face transplants. And I followed this family for those 3 years. And this young woman, Katie, was very beautiful. And she had her heart broken and she tried to commit suicide with a rifle and blew her whole face off. And her parents were teachers. And so they had to stop and become full-time caregivers. So at the time, the Cleveland Clinic was where they were, in Cleveland, Ohio, because the Cleveland Clinic had done a lot of face transplants. And happily for this family, if you can even say that about what they've gone through, which is horrible, the US government gave a huge grant, multi-million-dollar grant to Cleveland Clinic to move forward this science of face transplants, because so many military people are coming back from the war in Afghanistan with disfigured faces. So they were really trying to move this science forward so that these military people would not go through their lives with disfigurement. So Katie was very lucky, because that grant paid for everything that this family went through for 3 years. And finally, it's kind of a miracle that it happens at all, so she blew off her face and the doctors took parts of her thigh and her stomach and made a piecemeal face, what I call a piecemeal face. And I actually fell in love with that face, although it's kind of a face only a mother would love, I think, but she's such a sweet girl. And anyway, so I always tried to make beautiful portraits of her using flowers and things when I would go to visit them. But finally she got a face, and it was this grandmother whose granddaughter overdosed on drugs and went into a coma, and the doctor said she's brain dead, she is not going to live. And the grandmother decided to give Katie her granddaughter's face.
Wow.
And it was an amazing surgery, 25 hours. And anyway, Katie got a new face. And so this is after it's healed a little bit, but she's had multiple surgeries since, because it was a little bit big. So she's had multiple surgeries to refine it. But so this was one of the last times I went to see them, although I'm still in touch with them. Just was talking to them today, actually. And I felt that her parents were such warriors for their daughter, just warriors. They could be doctors. They learned everything they could about it, and they would push the doctors to do the best for Katie. They were really warriors about it, and I wanted to make a picture that spoke to this idea of these two people being such warriors for their little bird, sort of. And so the last time I was there, I talked to them about this picture that I wanted to make, and so I just asked them if they would lay down on the bed and embrace Katie, and they did, and I took the picture. And they really embraced me, and I feel like they made me a part of their family, and so I'm very grateful to them. But I'm happy that I think this picture shows so much love and tenderness, and yeah, I really admire these people so much. So sometimes we really are privileged to get to know these people. We're the lucky ones, actually, that we get to know these people.
Well, kudos. I mean, you look at the frame, and it's like the past and the present and the future kind of like colliding in one moment. And that, I think that's the magic. That is the magic. And speaking of magic, let's see more magic. We're gonna bring Maria Danielle Balcazar. She does this craft. I don't know what you might want to call it, but she has a way of creating images that transcends the moment. This is one of them. I refer to it as the little redeemer, but she says many people pull out a lot of other things out from this image. But Maria, tell me about this wonderful image.
Well, I said a moment ago that I usually stay at homes and speak with people. And the two images that I'm showing now, this is part of my project. They are in my book. But I don't know this person. But you can see that he's an African Brazilian. He's standing there and there's a storm coming. But he has this position because close to him you have the white Christ, the Corcovado, which is very well known, and it has the symbol of love and peace in Rio de Janeiro. So here you have this man. It's, photography is in a fraction of seconds. And I was doing all this work about the resilience to overcome adversity and all the heritage of African.
So we have this
in Brazil.
Older man. Now we're gonna move to another image of a younger boy, which is and this, look at the gesture, very similar. The arms are are to the side, kind of upright, and he's looking upward. Explain to me that connection between that the image we saw before and this image that we're looking at now.
Another one is like he's with open arms, he's embracing, I don't know, but you feel that energy. And this little boy, what is important here is that he is surrounded by these ribbons. And these ribbons are of hope. And each ribbon represents an African god. There are like 12 colors, and each color comes with people. It depends. Let's say if you want peace in your life, you have the white ribbon, and each god has its meaning, and it helps you. So he is there. He is barefoot. You can see that he even uses those ribbons as a belt.
Yes, I see it. I see
it.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So, well, that's, and then the last thing that I would say about this photo is that in those ribbons, it is written, Lembranza, o Senhor do Bonfim, that in English it's our Lord for a good ending. And that's what we all want to have, a good ending.
Yeah, we do.
Dignity, and with and surrounded by love. So I think both images, they're kind of similar, but they do make you feel energy. and a connection, and it has to do also with the Brazilian heritage in Brazil and the capacity to resist and transcend.
Oh, you're beautiful. We're going to move on to Griff. Now, Griff, I just want you to go straight to the backstory on this because, you know, it's just tell us how did you come across this image? Who has a beer in a tub? I don't know. After a hurricane, explain that to me.
Okay. This image was made while documenting the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew. And when you asked us to look for images that showed resilience and hope, this is one of the images that came to my mind. Simply because if you look at resilience, it's just the capacity to recover quickly, you know, after difficulties. I couldn't think of anything more difficult than losing your home to a storm, and a couple of days later, finding joy in peace in a tub of cool water and a cold beer.
Yeah, because everybody knows in the summer it's hot.
It's hot.
And
her name is Marjorie Conklin. The way the tub came about, earlier during the day, I was told to go and see if I could find any images of people policing the area with guns. And I came upon someone that said, yeah, there's a lady down the street. Go check her out. So myself and a reporter went down and we asked, did she know of anybody that patrolled the area? Marjorie says, well, I do. Do you want me to go get my gun? And we said, no. Hold on, go get your gun, Marjorie. Just let me know what time you're going to be here and we'll be back. So sure enough, we left. Came back around 5 o'clock to find a tub with a garden hose in it. And the tub was filling up. And I asked Marjorie, I said, what's the tub for? She says, oh, wait, you'll see. And I was a little afraid because I didn't know what was going to happen. You know, you're hot. You might want to come out of your clothes and jump in the tub. But she went, grabbed a beer, jumped in the tub. I took the frame. The tub got there because her brother drug it from a neighboring property onto her property. And she decided to use it as something that could bring her a little relief. You know, if you consider resilience as just the capacity to recover quickly, you know, from difficulties, then to me, this, in a sense, was a reflection of resilience.
it's gorgeous. Just look at the second image you have. Wow.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Mm.
Damn.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of those ones I wish I was there and you were not. But go ahead. Just being honest, sorry.
It's okay.
I can say that about all these images.
I take that as a compliment. One of the things that I love to do is explore my neighborhood. And I happen to live in an area close to what's called Wynwood. It's a tourist attraction in Miami. So as I'm walking around and I'm taking pictures, I come across this image of a woman standing here at this wall. And it seems as though she literally put herself in the mural,
Right.
which is not uncommon in Miami because everyone comes here
Right.
to basically stand in front of the murals and take pictures. But what was different about this particular image is that there was no one there to take her picture. So it seemed to me to be something a little bit more, as if she was reminiscing, as if she was remembering something or someone. And the picture now has particular interest to me, especially now that I've been isolated in my home for the last 25 days. And I think about all of the people who are now dealing with COVID-19 and people that may no longer be here. So from the time that I took this image until now, the actual meaning and the feeling for the image has changed.
Mm. That's tight.
That's interesting how that happens with photographs too, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes the original idea of them
Mhm.
changes over time, and that's very interesting. But it's such an intimate picture because she's touching the hand of the young girl, and
Mhm.
it's lovely. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
And,
So
and
tender.
I think I would argue every image we've seen so far has this idea of an expanded frame. Like the image lived outside of that moment where it was captured. It even has even a more intense
Connection.
meaning as time goes by. As you evolve and navigate this world, these images live on their own. And that's the magic, people.
Well,
That's the hope.
Hey, I was just thinking, prior to this whole era of social distancing, that would have never entered my mind.
Mm.
But
Mm.
now that I go back and I look at that image, it now evokes some emotion that prior to going through this experience, I didn't have.
Mm.
Yes, and I think also that we as photographers, we have a privileged capacity to touch people's soul and transmit strength to each other. That's why I think it's so important by showing all these examples of hopelessness and resilience. Oh, now it's Carl.
Well,
I'm going to break in here, Carl, for just a second. And we're running a little behind, I would say, but so I'm not, you've got two photos here. I want everyone to take a look at this first photo because I'm going to go quickly through it and go to the second one. And then you can talk about both of the photos together, Carl.
sure.
This photo, I know the backstory of this, and I think most people just looking at the image can figure out what might be happening here. But it's a wonderful story, and I know you'll tell us about it. But the second image has also special meaning, and it's really become sort of our the symbol of this project. We've got it on the website. We've got it on some of our materials. And we had this discussion before we started this program. Is we don't want just pictures. We're going to get a lot of pictures of smiling children, but there's got to be more than that. There's got to be some context to it. So give us some context to these two photos, Carl.
Well, I think both pictures speak of the weight of circumstance, the weight, the gravity of not choosing where you're born. Both of these images speak to the decision to live in spite of circumstance. This young girl, she, believe it or not, is suffering from malnutrition. The photograph you saw before with the young man doing a handstand, he just got his prosthetic 3 hours ago, was able to kick a ball, run with it in 3 hours. And with that sense of accomplishment, took upon himself to be jubilant. And I think that's what hope is about. I don't think hope has never been about smiling.
Mm-hmm.
Hope is definitely a conscious decision to be weightless upon the gravity of circumstance. I look at it reminds me of the bumblebee. Technically, a bumblebee should not be able to fly. Scientifically, the wings are too small. But that's what hope is. And when you submit your images, like everyone has done so far, when you submit these images, we're not looking for a description of the flesh. We're looking for the composition of the soul.
Mm. Woo! I'm writing that down.
And that's all I'm going to say.
I'm going to move this along, actually, Carl. Thank you very much. And I think you make a good point about the submissions and what we're looking for. I've picked out a couple that have come in. We've received some really great submissions, and we've only had submissions open for about 4 days, 3 days. And we're still, like I said, we're kind of building this thing on the fly. So we're still trying to figure out how we're going to handle the images that are going to come in. And we've since moved it to a different platform, but I won't go into that. But this first image that we're going to look at is from Richard Street. It shows Pedro Martinez, and he's waiting in the U.S. Customs House near the U.S.-Mexico border in Calexico, California. He's just been approved to be admitted into the country to be a farm worker. Carl, anyone want to chime in on their first impressions of this photo?
You know, this is one of those images, you know, it's like David said, you know, pulling something out of the ordinary, finding an image within where you are. And you look at this image, if you understand the context, he's right underneath the Statue of Liberty, and he's sitting down as still as possible. That is a conscious decision by the photographer. He is speaking to a truth that this man knows that he has to be better than better. Okay?
Indira, you're a photo editor. What's your impression here?
Right. I think the fact that there's so much dignity in this image, and it doesn't have anything to do with, you know, who he is or how much money he has, but the body language. He's just sitting there, and he's sitting straight because he's proud and he's happy and he's hopeful. And I think the juxtaposition of the Statue of Liberty and him right below, holding probably all of his possessions, just shows so much about how different his current reality is as opposed to what he's aspiring to. And every image is a journey, and every element in the image is a journey. And you look at this and you want to figure out what his journey is. Where is it taking him? Was he able to realize his hope? It's really great. I really love it.
Excellent. This next, okay, go ahead, Griff.
No, I was saying, in studying this image, it sort of reminds me, I mean, what comes to my mind is a quote by John Quincy Adams when he said that patience and perseverance have a magical effect before which difficulties disappear and obstacles vanish. And I feel that that's sort of where he's been. And it's gotten him, his patience and perseverance has gotten him to this point.
Excellent.
Yeah. Where he's been.
I would only hope I see something like this in everything that everybody said. I believe all of that. But what Indira said was just jumping off from that point. I hope that Richard Street, great name for a photographer, by the way. That's fantastic.
Yes, it is.
I hope that Richard Street did do what Indira was, the question mark that she had. She hopes that this man went off and did X, Y, and Z. And I hope Richard Street followed this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
This next image is from Kirsten Lewis. And the backstory here is pretty intense. And Kirsten, I think, is listening in. And Kirsten, I've unmuted you, but I'm going to go ahead and give the backstory, and then we might bring you in for a discussion. So the parents of this child had tried for 5 years to get pregnant. And on their second attempt at IVF, they succeeded. At about 13 weeks into the pregnancy, they went in for a routine ultrasound, and the tech could not detect a heartbeat. So they told them, come back next week, and we'll do a procedure to remove the miscarried fetus. But right before they did the procedure, the parents demanded for a second ultrasound, just to confirm.
Oh my God.
Doctors and techs were shocked to discover not only a healthy heartbeat, but a very active and healthy baby. So in her submission, Kirsten writes, Because of her parents' hope, love, and intuition, Farah's life was saved moments before a fatal procedure and is healthy and thriving today. Kirsten, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. First, I'm going to let the panelists make any comments they want, and then we might just they can also have questions for you.
That's wonderful frame. I mean, you think, I mean, I photographed births before, and with that backstory just made this image again. And that was Maggie's piece, and these are the kind of images we're looking for. You know, the images that the story itself, it sits and rests on these amazing stories of humanity. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's really beautiful too, because knowing that story, that is so profound. And again, the parents were really heroes in this story. But I'm so taken also by the plastic between the mother and the baby, and because in a way, I think the baby is always a mysterious thing before it comes out, right? You don't know what it's going to look like. Sometimes you don't know if it's a boy or a girl, depends on so many things. But and so there's always this kind of veil, or this kind of, not barrier, but something between the mother and the baby, even though they're very close because the baby's inside of her, but there's always this sense of this veil of mystery, and finally the baby comes out. And so I think that's really interesting to have that plastic in there. But I just that is one hell of a story. Good for those parents, you know, good for them. We should always ask a second time and a third time and a fourth time before we accept anybody's opinion about anything. We should.
It's excellent.
Kirsten Lewis is an amazing photographer anyway. And Kirsten, this is like right at your upper level. Fantastic image.
Beautiful.
As everybody said, just an incredible, with a great story behind it. Thank you very much. Amazing.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.
Kirsten, you want to say anything about the photo? And this baby's very healthy today, right?
Very healthy. And it was unexpected part of the story. I decided to start following them as they were starting their IVF treatment, and got to be there when they actually did the transfer. So I was as connected to this story just on a personal level to be able to witness that. And I was leaving for work in Europe when I got the text that they couldn't find the heartbeat, which devastated me. But what devastated me even more is the mom was like, "I'm so sorry. I should have called you to come in so you could have photographed me finding out." It just says a lot about the trust, their trust in me in the process. So, and I couldn't be there to photograph the DNC either because I had to speak at a conference in Europe. But I got to be there for the birth, and it was really powerful, and there were lots of tears. And for me, this was the biggest sign of hope I've seen in my work in a long time.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kirsten, for sharing.
You're welcome.
The next image is from Colin Finlay.
Finlay.
It was taken in Sarajevo in 1996, and this is from Colin's caption. After the ceasefire, children close to the front lines played jump rope with an old piece of telephone wire. Resilience and the ability to overcome their circumstances leads to fleeting moments of pure joy. And Colin is I think, listening in. I've unmuted you, Colin. So I'm going to let the panelists give their impressions first. And if anyone has a question for you, please.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, Collins, I know your work very well. We've worked side by side. And one of the things that I think you really understand beyond just timing is the ability to put people in their natural context. You know, I mean, this is just one of those images that it could have gone simple and plain, but you always find a way to lift it up again. Congratulations, a beautiful image.
Well, it's really interesting too, because the whole backdrop are these is this building that's just kind of bombed out. It's filled with the pockmarks of bullets from the war, and yet there's this joyful thing going on in front of it. So that also alludes to this idea of hope and joy can exist
Same place.
in spite of this horrible thing that goes on. And that was a horrible war. Yeah, horrible war.
Just an incredible image with all of the content that Maggie and Carl were describing, and then just incredibly well placed. The elements in this picture just incredibly well placed. I've always loved this picture.
And that,
Yeah, Colin. The one thing that I seem to take away from this picture and the enjoyment that I get from it is that it symbolizes to me that the hope is in the younger generation. It's just one of those things that's passed from generation to generation, and as a parent, it's the one thing that we hold on to for our children.
Yeah. And the use of scale. Look how you use it to scale when you move from center focus and you start moving to the right of the frame, and it gets smaller and smaller, and you have this huge building like Maggie referred to that's totally been a victim of war, and building is damaged but not the people. Or they're not going to let it affect their sense of hope.
Colin, you want to tell us a little bit how this photo came about?
Yeah, I mean, I was in Sarajevo working on an assignment for Natural History magazine, and it's crazy in terms of hope. God, I had 15 cameras donated from Canon and had probably 300 rolls of film donated from Kodak, and I went over to put those cameras into the hands of the children who survived the siege of Sarajevo. So in terms of hope, it was also giving hope to these children, how they were going to see their new world as they emerged from the aftermath of this war. And then it just took off in so many different directions. It became a half-hour documentary, those exhibitions and whatnot. So there was a whole backstory to this entire, program and the entire project. But, Sarajevo was never a war that you just, stepped into. It bled from the inside out, and I bled with it each and every time I lifted my camera. That search for hunger, that frozen truth, that one moment, crystalline moment of hope. And obviously I was photographing during the war when it was going on, and then its aftermath. So it was multiple trips for me to Sarajevo and Mostar. So it was always in search of those moments, Carl. And I certainly found them with you too in Haiti on our first trip there.
Yes,
I really powerful memories of that, man. You've been a true brother for God almost 28 years.
I've been blessed, my brother. Been blessed. By all.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Jim.
So we're definitely running a tad long tonight. Let me, is my screen still sharing there? I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
We all here, yeah.
Well, we can see ourselves.
Yeah. You're no longer sharing a screen. It's just us now.
Okay, I got you. Before I move on to some Q&As, first we're going to run a little long tonight, maybe 10 minutes if everyone can hang out for an extra 10 minutes. But I wonder if you can address this, Maggie, because I know you're doing a project right now about documenting your life in isolation for publication. People that just saw these photos, saw your photos, everyone else's photos, saw Kerson's and Collins and Richards, they might be a little intimidated, but you don't really have to be in a war zone or at the border to make pictures that show hope. What would you tell people?
I would say photograph everything, because there's nothing, sometimes the biggest story or the most beautiful thing or the most important thing is something small, like a gesture. And I also think people shouldn't be intimidated by photography or photographers, because I think they think sometimes that, oh, well, I can never do that because I'm not that person, or I think you should never let that intimidate you, because everybody has a story to tell. And it doesn't matter how you tell it. You get to decide how you'll tell it. And so photography is such a democratic thing, I think. And except that it's not always been democratic because it's expensive, but now because of these things, and almost everybody has them, it's very democratic. And now we can see pictures by all kinds of people from all over the world. And this is one of the most joyful things for me, and I think for a lot of people. I'm sure Indira would certainly say so, and anybody who likes to look at pictures. This is amazing. We get to see how people are living and, you know, what they're doing. And gosh, I'm amazed at some of the pictures I see on this little instrument, and they're not necessarily by professional photographers, because we also sometimes get trapped into this having to deliver a certain look or a certain, you know, there's expectations. And I think when you can liberate yourself from those things, like photographing myself for this project has been challenging because, but also very liberating, because I just said, well, I'm just gonna photograph weird stuff. And I'll photograph myself, but I'm gonna do some conceptual work because I'm gonna try to show what's going on in my head. And so that's been the most fun. And a lot of the pictures people would look at and say, what is this? Or who is this woman? Like, what the heck? But I guess I would just say, don't be intimidated by anybody or anything, because sometimes, I'm fond of saying, sometimes the quietest person in the room has the best idea. And I think that's very important to remember for everybody. So sometimes the best picture in the room can be taken by somebody who's never even taken a picture. And I see that a lot in people who aren't professional photographers. So people should not be intimidated. They should be encouraged. Look, everybody's got this now, so take some pictures. And you know what else is great about this little thing? Is there's something about when you stick a camera in front of people, they're suddenly uncomfortable, or they think, oh, well, you know, you're taking something, or it's just, there's a division. But everybody has these now. And so you can actually be playful about it, because this is something they have. And I actually do an iPhone project in Haiti, where it's a portrait project, because now after the earthquake, everybody has a phone, and so it's much easier to photograph them, and it can be very playful. So anyway, don't be intimidated, you know, don't ever be intimidated. Just be wild and free, because you only get to come around this way once, I think. Oh,
Awesome.
for me.
So I'm gonna, there's someone listening named Tuba Donor. Tuba, if you're there, I've just unmuted you. You can unmute your microphone and ask your question, please.
What a great name.
Hi there. I am Turkish. My name is coming from Arabic. I was asking David Allen Harvey about his, I listened to you talking with Martin Parr on Magnum's Instagram page, and you were asking him about, during this difficult times, the coronavirus, COVID-19 disease and everything, you were asking him about if he can give some advices to photographers all around the world. What can they do to do, I don't know, maybe projects or anything. And he told you that they can go to supermarkets and take photos of difficulties people are having and anything they see. But I want to know your opinions about that. What would you say to photographers?
Well, it's really interesting that people are kind of forced to be at home right now, because anybody who's ever been around my workshops, Maria for one, Kirsten Lewis for another, know that I try to get people to go home in the first place. I try to get people over the idea that they've got to fly off to an exotic place in order to make good pictures. Again, that's why I gravitated to those European photographers and painters that I mentioned in the beginning. So for me to be at home is a great pleasure. I travel. I was never interested in travel anyway. I was interested in stories, and I had to travel to get there. But given my first choice, I'd rather be right here on my front porch making photographs, and I do it every day. And I don't, you know, I'm 75 years old, right? And I told you I grew up, you know, just up the road here. 60 years ago, was really involved in photography. And I don't know exactly how, but I can tell you, if you can ring the bell at the end of the bar when you get to be my age, and you have just as much fun taking pictures now as you did at the beginning, that, I don't know, that's pure joy. And the interesting thing at the Corona thing does put us into a whole new world. And Martin and I were talking about that. It is a game changer. I hope that the good side of human nature does come out of this. That's my hope right now. Because it could go either way. You could imagine this thing turning into something where really the worst side of human nature comes out. We end up in a totalitarian regime or something, I don't know. Or the good side of human nature comes out, which is why I'm part of this program tonight. And I thank you, because I think this particular group of people is the energy that we want to put out. It's positive energy, and I hope it does speak to the positive side of human nature. And using photography as a language is a great way to do it. It's a great way to do it. And the social media becomes more important all the time. And that's enough for now. Thank you.
Great. The last question for the night, and I'm sorry we can't get to all the questions. We'll try to look through them after the show and answer what we can. But is Alexandra Gelberd there? Alexandra, I've unmuted you, so you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, good evening. And thank you all so much for sharing your work and wisdom. My question is inspired by the second image of Maria Dañez. And you described the multicolor ribbons in the background, and knowing the kind of spiritual context of those, you know, it added a whole lot to my understanding of the image. But I was wondering why you made the decision to create the image in black and white instead of color.
Yes, I shoot on both. I did the book in black and white because sometimes black and white and the color kind of, I did have this question before. They tell me, Brazil, how can you do that in black and white? But sometimes color distracts you and it lets more of poetry, like poetry come out. And but I was thinking about that today when I chose this photo, because I said, I think they would understand more maybe the colors. But I always shoot on color, and then I pass it to black and white, and it definitely looked better in black and white. But of course, to explain that, the colors, the 12 colors, would have helped if you would see this in color.
So, thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Of course, I'm going to actually go to the end here, and we're going to wrap it up. Man, I saw us going along in the beginning, and it was such a great conversation. That's one of those times where you just throw away your script and say, you know, this show's got a life of its own. It was an amazing, amazing discussion. I hope everyone got a lot out of it. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight.
Everybody for joining us. Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Not that you had anywhere else to go tonight, okay? Let's about that. Thanks to Shelly Hahn, who's helping us behind the scenes, and also Susie Bauer, who's been managing the live stream on Facebook. Thanks to Martina Tauti for manning our social media. We'll be posting a video of tonight's talk on our website and YouTube page, and there will also be a recording available immediately on our Focus on the Story Facebook page. You know, we couldn't do these free talks every week without our sponsors, so we do love these folks: Fujifilm, Tamron, Multiple Exposures Gallery, Peak Design, Capital Photography Center. Thank you. That's what pays the bills for the Zoom webinars. Next week, we're going to go to a morning show because we want to give back to the people in Europe and Asia, and we're going to be talking about photojournalism on the front lines of a pandemic. And it should be a very, very good talk about the human toll, the emotional toll, not only on the photographers, but the stories that they're seeing out in the field. So I hope you'll join us for that. Thank you, panelists. You're amazing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
You guys.
Not all of you.
Everybody.
Dropped
Good to see you,
all the
David.
links in there, and I hope everyone will visit them, their pages. You know, get Maria's book. It's amazing.
I hope we all get to meet in person again. I mean, this is
Next
the way to.
Oh, we will.
Carl, before I close it, I want to let you say any final words.
Well, I'll say this to everyone. We are in control of what we can control. When we walk into a situation, we look for the light. And as you decide how you're going to navigate through this pandemic that we're dealing with, find the light and capture that light with your camera or with your phone or even with a pen and piece of paper. But do something, because that something can most likely can be that game changer. Maybe not for a larger group of people, but maybe for that one person. Because I'm going to tell you, it was a game changer for me. And I'm sure everyone that's sitting on this panel had that moment where they made and they said, this is what I want to do. Because none of us are being millionaires here.
No.
What we lack in funding, we have in soul. And that's all we want to do is share our soul with everyone. So please share yours. And I promise you, I'll give you tenfold of mine.
Thank you very much.
you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Shelley, if you're out there, I hope you got a copy of the chat tonight. We'll make all the links and resources that were mentioned in the chat available on our Facebook page. Awesome. Thank you, Shelley. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Adios.